The night air hung thick with tension as Master Sergeant Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical vest one final time. Beside him, a sleek German shepherd named Luna sat perfectly still, her dark eyes scanning the perimeter of the abandoned warehouse. Her ears twitched at every small sound, trained to detect the slightest movement that didn't belong. Luna wasn't just any military working dog. She was a combat veteran with 3 tours of duty under her collar, trained in explosives detection, patrol work, and tactical assault. Her black and tan coat bore a few scars from her service overseas, each one a testament to her unwavering loyalty and fierce protective instincts. Tonight, she was part of a special operation to apprehend a group of arms dealers who had been using the warehouse as their base of operations. The intelligence reports indicated that Marcus Volkov and his crew had been smuggling weapons through the port city for months, selling military-grade firearms to the highest bidder. What made this operation particularly dangerous was Volkov's reputation for violence and his crew's willingness to fight rather than surrender. The warehouse sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by empty lots and abandoned buildings, making it the perfect hideout for criminal activities. Jake had worked with Luna for over 2 years, and their bond was unbreakable. He could read her body language like a book, and she responded to his commands with precision that impressed even the most seasoned handlers. Tonight, as they crouched behind a stack of shipping containers, Jake felt Luna's muscles tense beneath his hand. She had detected something. The warehouse loomed before them like a concrete fortress, its broken windows staring out like empty eye sockets. Rusted metal doors hung slightly ajar, and the faint sound of voices drifted through the night air. The operation had been planned for weeks, with multiple entry points and backup teams positioned around the building. But Jake knew that no matter how well they planned, things could go wrong in seconds. Luna's nose worked constantly, processing scents that Jake's human senses couldn't detect. She could smell the gun oil, the unwashed bodies of the criminals inside, and something else that made her hackles rise slightly. There were at least 6 people in the building, maybe more, and they were armed. Her training told her to wait for Jake's command, but every instinct screamed at her to be ready for violence. The radio crackled softly in Jake's ear as team leader Captain Rodriguez confirmed positions. Alpha team in position. Bravo team ready. Charlie team standing by. Jake's thumb found the transmit button. Delta team ready. Luna's picking up multiple targets inside. There was a brief pause before Rodriguez responded. Copy that, Delta. Remember, we want Volkov alive if possible. These weapons have been used in 3 murders this month. As they waited for the go signal, Jake's mind wandered to how he and Luna had ended up together. She had been assigned to him after her previous handler was injured in an explosion in Afghanistan. The dog had been traumatized, refusing to work with anyone for weeks. But Jake had patience and a gentle way with animals that gradually broke through Luna's walls. Now, she would follow him into hell itself if he asked. The warehouse district was eerily quiet except for the distant sound of traffic from the main highway. Abandoned cranes and empty loading docks created a maze of shadows where anything could be hiding. Jake checked his watch and saw they were 30 seconds from go time. Luna sensed the change in her handler's breathing and shifted into attack position, her body coiled like a spring. Go, go, go. Rodriguez's voice cut through the silence, and suddenly, the night exploded into action. Flashbangs detonated at the main entrances as the assault teams breached the building from multiple points. Jake and Luna moved swiftly toward their assigned entry point, a service door on the building's east side. The door was unlocked, which immediately raised Jake's suspicions. Luna's nose told her the same thing as they slipped inside. The criminals had been expecting them. The warehouse floor was a maze of shipping containers and wooden crates, creating dozens of hiding spots and potential ambush points. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the concrete floor, and the air smelled of rust, oil, and fear. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, automatic weapons fire erupted as the other teams engaged the criminals. Jake could hear shouting and the crash of overturning furniture as the battle spread through the warehouse. Luna stayed close to his left side, her eyes constantly moving, searching for threats that might come from any direction. They moved deeper into the building, following a narrow corridor between two rows of containers. Luna's ears suddenly snapped forward, and she froze in place. Jake immediately stopped, knowing that his partner had detected something critical. The sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead, along with hushed voices speaking in what sounded like Russian. Jake signaled Luna to stay as he peered around the corner of a container. 3 men in dark clothing were crouched behind an overturned table, their weapons trained on the main entrance where Alpha Team was advancing. They hadn't noticed Jake and Luna's approach from the side. It was the perfect opportunity for a surprise attack. But as Jake prepared to give Luna the attack command, something went wrong. A piece of metal debris, knocked loose by the earlier explosions, crashed to the floor behind them. The 3 criminals spun around, their weapons swinging toward Jake's position. In that split second, Jake realized they were in serious trouble. The first gunman fired a burst from his assault rifle, bullets sparking off the concrete near Jake's head. Luna exploded into motion without waiting for a command, her protective instincts overriding her training. She launched herself at the nearest attacker with a snarl that echoed through the warehouse like thunder. The man screamed as Luna's jaws clamped down on his forearm, her powerful bite preventing him from aiming his weapon. The other 2 criminals turned their guns toward the dog, but Jake was already moving, his own rifle spitting fire as he engaged multiple targets simultaneously. The warehouse erupted in chaos as the firefight intensified. Luna released her first target and spun toward the second gunman, her speed and ferocity shocking the criminals who had never faced a trained military working dog. Her teeth found the man's leg, bringing him down hard as his weapon clattered across the floor. But the third criminal had managed to take cover behind a steel support beam, and he was bringing his rifle to bear on Luna's exposed position. Jake saw the danger and shouted a warning, but Luna was committed to her attack. The criminal's finger tightened on the trigger just as everything changed in ways no one could have predicted. Time seemed to slow as Luna faced down the barrel of the assault rifle. The criminal's eyes were cold and calculating as he prepared to eliminate the threat she posed to his operation. But just as his finger began to squeeze the trigger, a woman's voice cut through the chaos of gunfire and shouting like a knife through silk. Mishka, the single word rang out clear and unmistakable, spoken with a thick Eastern European accent that carried both authority and desperation. Luna's entire body froze mid-attack, her powerful muscles locking in place as if she had been turned to stone. The criminal's weapon remained trained on her, but confusion flickered across his face as he looked around for the source of the voice. Jake's blood ran cold as he watched his partner's reaction. In all their time together, through countless training exercises and real combat situations, he had never seen Luna respond to a command that wasn't his. The dog stood motionless, her head tilted slightly, as if listening for something only she could hear. The word had triggered something deep in her memory, something that predated her military training. From behind a wall of stacked crates, a figure emerged into the dim light of the warehouse. She was a woman in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun, and wearing the practical clothing of someone who worked with her hands. Her face bore the weathered lines of a hard life, but her eyes held an intelligence that immediately set her apart from the other criminals. She moved with careful deliberation, her hands visible and empty as she approached the frozen tableau. Mishka, K-O-M-N-E, she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of command and affection that made Luna's tail twitch almost imperceptibly. The woman's eyes never left the dog as she continued speaking in what Jake now recognized as Russian. The criminal with the rifle looked between the woman and Luna, his weapon wavering as he tried to understand what was happening. Jake kept his own weapon trained on the gunman while trying to process the impossible scene unfolding before him. Luna remained frozen, but her breathing had changed. Instead of the controlled aggression of a military working dog in combat, her posture suggested confusion and something that looked disturbingly like recognition. The woman took another step closer, and Luna's head turned to track her movement. The woman was speaking continuously now, her voice low and soothing despite the violence erupting around them. Jake caught fragments of Russian mixed with what sounded like commands or endearments, but the tone was what struck him most. This wasn't the voice of a stranger trying to distract or confuse a military animal. This was the voice of someone who knew Luna intimately, someone who had spoken to her this way many times before. "Who are you?" Jake demanded, his rifle still covering the armed criminal who seemed equally confused by the turn of events. The woman's eyes flicked to him briefly before returning to Luna. When she spoke, her English was heavily accented but clear. "I am Dr. Katerina Volkov," she said quietly. "And this dog, she was mine before she was yours." The name hit Jake like a physical blow. Volkov, the same name as the arms dealer they had come to arrest. But this woman didn't look like a weapons smuggler. She looked like what she claimed to be, a doctor or veterinarian, someone who spent her life healing rather than harming. Luna took a tentative step toward the woman, then stopped as if fighting against conflicting impulses. Her military training told her to protect Jake and complete her mission, but something deeper, something from before her training, was calling her toward this stranger who somehow knew her real name. Jake had never heard Luna called anything but Luna, but the way she responded to Mishka suggested it was a name from her earliest puppyhood. The armed criminal finally lowered his weapon, realizing that the immediate threat had passed. Around the warehouse, the sounds of fighting were diminishing as the other teams secured their areas. But in this small corner of the building, a drama was unfolding that would change everything Jake thought he knew about his partner. Dr. Volkov continued speaking to Luna in Russian, her voice growing more emotional with each word. Jake caught enough to understand that she was telling the dog how much she had missed her, how she had never stopped looking for her, how she had feared she would never see her again. Luna's tail began to wag slowly, almost tentatively, and she took another step forward. "How is this possible?" Jake asked, his voice hoarse with shock. Luna's been in military service for 4 years. Her records show she was bred in Germany for the working dog program. Dr. Volkov's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him, her hands still extended toward the confused dog. "Records can be falsified," she said softly, "especially when valuable animals are involved. Mishka was stolen from my clinic in Prague when she was just 6 months old. I had been training her as a therapy dog for my patients, children with trauma from the war. She was so intelligent, so gentle with the wounded. But someone saw her potential for other purposes." The pieces began falling into place for Jake. Luna's exceptional abilities, her almost supernatural intuition about human emotions, her way of knowing exactly what he needed before he asked for it. These weren't just the results of military training. They were the foundation laid by a woman who had understood the dog's true nature from the beginning. Luna was now only a few feet from Dr. Volkov, her body trembling with the effort of containing conflicting emotions. The woman knelt down slowly, making herself less threatening, and continued speaking in the same soothing tone. Jake could see the internal battle playing out in his partner's body language. Every fiber of her being was torn between her loyalty to him and the powerful pull of forgotten memories. "The man you call Marcus Volkov," Dr. Volkov continued, "he is my brother, but not by choice. When our parents died, we were separated. I became a doctor, devoted to healing. He chose a different path. When he learned that I had found Mishka again, he threatened to hurt her if I did not help him with his business. I have been treating the injuries of his men, patching them up so they could continue their criminal activities. But I never stopped hoping that someday I would find a way to save my dog and stop my brother's violence." The emotional weight of her words seemed to reach Luna on a level deeper than training or commands. The dog took the final step forward and pressed her head against Dr. Volkov's outstretched hands. The woman's tears flowed freely now as she ran her fingers through the familiar fur, whispering words of love and regret in her native language. Jake felt his own eyes burning as he watched the reunion, but his military training kept him alert to their surroundings. The gunfire in other parts of the warehouse had stopped, which meant the operation was nearly complete. Soon, his team would be securing this area, and they would find him in this impossible situation with a woman who was both a victim and an accomplice to the crimes they had come to stop. As if reading his thoughts, Dr. Volkov looked up at him with eyes that held both hope and resignation. "I know you must arrest me," she said. "I have helped criminals, even if it was to protect Mishka. But please, I ask you to understand why I did what I did. And Please, do not let them separate us again. She may be a soldier now, but she was my child first. Luna seemed to sense the tension in both humans and lifted her head to look between them. In her dark eyes, Jake saw a complexity of emotion that he had never noticed before. This wasn't just a trained military working dog. This was a being with a history, with relationships and memories that stretched far beyond their partnership. The realization changed everything he thought he knew about loyalty, duty, and the bonds that truly matter. The sound of approaching boots echoed through the warehouse as Jake's team began their final sweep of the building. Luna remained pressed against Dr. Volkov, but her ears swiveled toward the approaching sounds, torn between her instinct to return to her handler and the overwhelming pull of rediscovered memories. Jake could see the conflict playing out in every line of her body, and his heart ached for the impossible choice his partner was being forced to make. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through Jake's radio. "Delta Team, report status. We've secured the main area and arrested 4 suspects, but we're still looking for Marcus Volkov." Jake hesitated before responding, acutely aware that the woman kneeling beside his dog was the arms dealer's sister. The ethical implications of the situation were staggering, but his immediate concern was for Luna's well-being. "Delta Team secure," Jake replied carefully. 1 civilian in custody, 2 suspects down, but alive. It wasn't a complete lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Dr. Volkov was technically a civilian, even if she had been coerced into helping criminals. The armed men Luna had attacked were indeed down, though they had fled during the emotional reunion between the dog and her former owner. Dr. Volkov seemed to understand the precarious nature of their situation. She slowly stood up, keeping her hands visible while maintaining gentle contact with Luna. "Your partner is struggling," she observed, her voice filled with compassion. "She remembers me, but she also knows her duty to you. This conflict will cause her great stress if we do not find a solution." Jake studied the woman's face, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. But all he saw was genuine concern for Luna's emotional well-being and a deep sadness that spoke to years of loss and guilt. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said, keeping his voice low to avoid attracting the attention of his approaching teammates. "How did Luna end up in the military program if she was stolen as a puppy?" Dr. Volkov's expression grew grim as she recalled painful memories. "I was working in a refugee camp outside Prague, using therapy dogs to help children who had witnessed terrible violence. Mishka was exceptional, even as a young puppy. She could sense when a child was about to have a panic attack and would position herself to provide comfort. Word of her abilities spread, and people began visiting the camp specifically to see her work." She paused to stroke Luna's head, and the dog leaned into the familiar touch. "One day, a man claiming to be from a dog breeding organization visited the camp. He said he was documenting exceptional working dogs for research purposes. I was proud to show him what Mishka could do, never imagining that I was signing her death warrant as far as our relationship was concerned." The approaching footsteps were getting closer, and Jake could hear Rodriguez calling out room numbers as the team cleared each section. They had perhaps 2 minutes before discovery, and Jake found himself making a decision that surprised him with its clarity. "Keep talking," he whispered, "but speak quietly." Dr. Volkov nodded gratefully. 3 days later, armed men broke into the clinic where I kept the dogs overnight. They took Mishka and 2 other young dogs, leaving behind a note that said if I reported the theft, they would return to hurt the children. I was paralyzed by fear and guilt. For weeks, I searched every contact I had, but it was as if she had vanished from the earth. Luna whined softly, as if understanding the pain in her former owner's voice. Jake realized that the dog's exceptional empathy, which he had attributed entirely to her military training, was actually an inherent gift that had been recognized and nurtured from puppyhood. The military had built upon a foundation that already existed, creating a working dog of almost supernatural ability. Months later, Dr. Volkov continued, "I learned that my brother Marcus had been involved in the theft. He had been contacted by someone in the illegal animal trade who specialized in acquiring exceptional dogs for wealthy buyers or foreign military programs. When I confronted him, he claimed he had done it for my own good, that I was wasting Mishka's talents on soft work when she could be trained for more important purposes. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. That was the last time I spoke to my brother willingly. I spent years tracking rumors and following leads, always hoping to find her. When I learned that Marcus was operating in this city, I came here hoping to finally confront him about what he had done. Instead, I found myself trapped in his organization, forced to provide medical care for his men in exchange for information about Mishka's whereabouts. Jake's mind raced as he processed the implications of her story. "So you knew Luna was here in this city?" he asked. Dr. Volkov shook her head sadly. "Not until tonight. Marcus told me that an old friend had information about Mishka, and that if I helped with one final job, he would arrange a meeting. I realized too late that it was a trap designed to force me to stay silent about his activities. But when I heard the fighting tonight, when I saw her attacking those men, I knew immediately. Even after all these years, even with all her new training, she still moves exactly the way she did as a puppy." The sound of boots in the corridor was now very close, and Jake could hear Rodriguez directing his men to check the remaining rooms. Luna seemed to sense the approaching crisis and moved to position herself between Dr. Volkov and Jake, as if trying to physically bridge the gap between her two worlds. Her behavior was breaking Jake's heart, but it was also showing him something important about the nature of loyalty and love. "Listen to me," Jake said urgently. "When my team gets here, you need to cooperate fully. Tell them everything you've told me, and emphasize that you were coerced into helping your brother. They'll arrest you, but if your story checks out, you might avoid serious charges." Dr. Volkov nodded, but her eyes were fixed on Luna with desperate intensity. "And Mishka?" she asked. "What will happen to her?" Jake felt his throat tighten as he realized he didn't have a good answer. Military working dogs belonged to the government, and Luna's exceptional abilities made her extremely valuable to the program. The chances of the military allowing her to retire to civilian life, especially with someone connected to a criminal organization, were virtually zero. But as he looked at Luna's conflicted posture, at the way she kept glancing between him and Dr. Volkov as if seeking permission to love them both, Jake began to formulate a plan that was either brilliant or career-ending. The approaching footsteps stopped just outside their section of the warehouse, and Rodriguez's voice called out clearly. "Delta Team, we're moving to your position for final sweep. Status report." Jake took a deep breath and made a choice that would change all their lives. His response would either save Luna from a lifetime of internal conflict or destroy his own military career in the process. "Delta Team has secured one high-value witness," Jake called back to Rodriguez, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. "Dr. Katerina Volkov, the suspect's sister. She has critical information about the weapons operation and is cooperating fully." He looked directly at Dr. Volkov as he spoke, willing her to understand that her next words would determine not only her own fate, but Luna's as well. The sound of approaching footsteps quickened, and within moments Captain Rodriguez appeared around the corner of the shipping containers, followed by two other team members. His tactical gear was dusty from the operation, and there was a grim satisfaction in his expression that suggested the main objectives had been achieved. But his demeanor shifted when he saw the unusual scene before him. Luna was sitting precisely between Jake and Dr. Volkov, her posture alert but not aggressive. The woman knelt with her hands clearly visible, tears still glistening on her cheeks, but her expression resolute. It was obvious that something significant had transpired, something beyond the normal scope of their mission. Rodriguez's experienced eyes took in every detail as he approached cautiously. "Dr. Volkov," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the authority of command, but also a hint of curiosity. "We've been looking for your brother. Intelligence reports suggest you've been treating injuries for members of his organization. That makes you an accessory to multiple felonies." Dr. Volkov nodded slowly, accepting the statement without trying to deny the charges. "Captain Rodriguez," she replied, her accent thick with emotion, "I have information that will help you understand the full scope of my brother's operations. But first, I must ask for your patience while I explain a situation that affects this brave dog." She gestured carefully toward Luna, who remained motionless but watchful. Rodriguez's eyebrows rose slightly. Military working dogs were respected members of the team, but it was unusual for a civilian criminal to express specific concern for one. He glanced at Jake, noting the tension in his subordinate's posture and the way Luna seemed to be responding to both handlers simultaneously. Jake stepped forward, making a decision that would either save his career or end it. "Sir, I need to brief you on some information that's relevant to both the criminal investigation and Luna's operational status. Dr. Volkov has provided details about how Luna was originally acquired for the military program, and the circumstances are not what they appear to be in the official records." For the next 10 minutes, with Dr. Volkov providing additional details and documentation she had carried with her for years, Jake explained the true story of Luna's origins. Rodriguez listened with growing amazement and concern as the tale unfolded. The theft of the young dog, the falsified breeding records, the coercion of Dr. Volkov into providing medical services for criminals, and Marcus Volkov's role in the illegal animal trade that had separated dog and owner. Luna remained seated between the two humans she cared about most, occasionally looking up at Rodriguez as if gauging his reaction to their story. Her behavior was unlike anything the captain had seen in his 15 years of working with military dogs. The animal was clearly experiencing emotional stress, but she was also demonstrating a level of cognitive awareness that was remarkable even by military working dog standards. "These are serious allegations," Rodriguez said finally. "If what you're saying is true, it means Luna was essentially a victim of trafficking before she entered military service. That would raise significant questions about the legality of her acquisition and the validity of her current status." He paused, studying the dog with new understanding. It would also explain her exceptional performance ratings. She wasn't just trained to be empathetic. She was born with those abilities and had them nurtured from puppyhood. Dr. Volkov reached slowly into her jacket pocket, causing the other team members to tense momentarily until she produced a worn leather folder. "I have maintained Mishka's veterinary records, photographs from her time at the refugee camp, and testimony from witnesses who remember her work with traumatized children. Everything needed to prove her true identity and origins." Rodriguez examined the documents while maintaining his professional demeanor, but Jake could see the wheels turning in his superior's mind. The captain was known for his integrity and his genuine care for the working dogs under his command. If he became convinced that Luna had been stolen from her rightful owner, he would feel obligated to pursue justice, regardless of the complications it might create. "The legal implications are staggering," Rodriguez admitted after reviewing the evidence. "But our immediate concern has to be Luna's well-being. The emotional stress of this reunion could affect her operational effectiveness and her overall health. We need to think carefully about how to proceed." Dr. Volkov spoke up carefully. "Captain, I do not ask you to simply give Mishka back to me. I understand that she has formed a strong bond with Sergeant Morrison, and I can see that she has been well cared for and has found purpose in her military service. What I ask is that you consider her needs as a living being with emotional connections to both of us." Luna seemed to sense that the conversation was about her future, and she moved closer to Jake while keeping her eyes on Dr. Volkov. Her behavior suggested that she understood, on some level, that a decision was being made that would determine whether she would have to choose between the two humans who loved her most. Rodriguez was quiet for several long moments, his expression thoughtful as he weighed competing obligations and interests. Finally, he looked directly at Jake with an expression that mixed understanding with professional concern. "Morrison, I can see that this situation is affecting you as much as it's affecting Luna. What are you thinking? What would be best for your partner?" Jake took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would define not only his relationship with Luna, but his entire future in the military. "Sir, I've been thinking about something Dr. Volkov said earlier. Luna's greatest strength has always been her ability to form deep emotional connections with the people she works with. That's not just a useful military skill. It's who she is at her core." He paused, looking down at Luna, who gazed back at him with complete trust. "What if we're approaching this wrong? What if instead of seeing this as a choice between military service and civilian life, we consider it an opportunity to create something new? Dr. Volkov has medical training and experience with trauma therapy. Luna has proven abilities in both military operations and emotional support work. Maybe there's a way to honor both aspects of her nature. Rodriguez's expression shifted from skepticism to genuine interest. What exactly are you proposing, Morrison? Jake felt his heart pounding as he prepared to articulate an idea that had been forming since the moment he watched Luna freeze at the sound of her original name. Sir, what if we recommended Luna for transition to a specialized program that could utilize both her military training and her natural therapeutic abilities? There are pilot programs developing therapy dog services for veterans with PTSD, and there's growing recognition that working dogs themselves need emotional support after combat service. The idea was ambitious and unprecedented, but Rodriguez was listening intently. Dr. Volkov's eyes widened as she began to understand what Jake was suggesting. It was a solution that could honor Luna's military service while acknowledging her origins and her need for the kind of emotional fulfillment that only Dr. Volkov could provide. Luna tilted her head as she listened to Jake's voice, and, for a moment, it seemed as if she understood that her fate hung in the balance of human decisions and bureaucratic processes that were beyond her control, but not beyond her influence. Her next action would prove to everyone present that she was far more than just a highly trained animal. Luna stood up slowly and walked to the exact center point between Jake and Dr. Volkov, then sat down with perfect military precision. She looked up at Captain Rodriguez and performed a flawless salute, raising her right paw in the gesture that had taken months of training to perfect. Then, without breaking eye contact with the captain, she turned her head toward Dr. Volkov and gently placed her paw on the woman's knee in a gesture of comfort and recognition. The message was unmistakable. Luna was demonstrating that she understood her dual nature and was asking for the impossible to become possible. She wanted to honor her military training and her bond with Jake, while also acknowledging the love and connection she felt with the woman who had first recognized her potential for healing others. Rodriguez stared at the dog in amazement, realizing he was witnessing something extraordinary. In his years of experience with military working dogs, he had never seen one demonstrate such complex emotional intelligence or such clear communication of abstract concepts. Luna wasn't just responding to training or instinct. She was making a deliberate choice to bridge two worlds rather than choosing between them. That settles it, Rodriguez said quietly, his voice filled with respect for the animal's remarkable demonstration. This dog is too valuable and too unique to be handled through normal channels. I'm going to make some calls to headquarters and to the Veterans Administration. If there's any way to create a program that utilizes Luna's full range of abilities, we're going to find it. Dr. Volkov's tears began flowing again, but this time they were tears of hope rather than despair. Captain, you would consider allowing Mishka to work in therapy while maintaining her military status? Is such a thing possible? Rodriguez nodded slowly, his mind already working through the bureaucratic challenges they would face. It won't be easy, and it will take time to arrange, but I've seen stranger things happen when the right people get involved. Luna's service record speaks for itself, and her unique background could actually be an asset in developing new approaches to veteran care. He looked at Jake with a mixture of pride and concern. Morrison, are you prepared for what this might mean for your career? Advocating for this kind of program change could be seen as either innovative leadership or insubordination, depending on who's making the judgment. Jake looked down at Luna, who had moved to sit directly beside him while keeping one paw extended toward Dr. Volkov. The dog's expression was calm and trusting, completely confident that the humans who loved her would find a way to make everything work. That trust strengthened Jake's resolve more than any military training ever could. Sir, Luna has saved my life more times than I can count, and not just in combat situations. She's taught me about loyalty, sacrifice, and the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return except the chance to serve others. If there's a possibility that she can use those gifts to help other veterans while still maintaining our partnership, then it's worth any risk to my career. Rodriguez nodded approvingly, then turned to address Dr. Volkov with the same serious tone he would use with any crucial witness. Doctor, your cooperation in this matter will be essential, but I need to know that you understand the legal situation you're facing. Your brother's activities have resulted in serious crimes, and your involvement, even under coercion, makes you legally vulnerable. Dr. Volkov straightened her shoulders and looked Rodriguez directly in the eyes. Captain, I am prepared to testify about everything I know regarding Marcus's operations. I will provide detailed information about his suppliers, his clients, and the locations where he stores weapons. My only request is that you allow me to continue caring for Mishka in whatever capacity the military deems appropriate. The sound of vehicles outside the warehouse indicated that the crime scene teams and additional personnel were arriving to process the scene and transport the arrested suspects. Rodriguez checked his watch and realized they needed to move quickly to ensure that Luna's unique situation was properly documented before it became lost in the standard bureaucratic processing of the operation. Morrison, I want you to prepare a detailed report on Luna's performance during tonight's operation, with particular attention to her behavior during this reunion. Document everything we've discovered about her origins, and include Dr. Volkov's testimony as supporting evidence. Rodriguez's tone became more formal as he shifted into command mode. I'm going to contact Colonel Bradley immediately and request an emergency review of Luna's status pending investigation into her acquisition circumstances. Over the following weeks, Jake's report made its way through multiple levels of military bureaucracy, generating intense discussion and debate at each step. The story of the stolen therapy dog who became a decorated military working dog captured the attention of officials who had never considered the emotional lives of their four-legged soldiers. Dr. Volkov's cooperation with the investigation into her brother's arms dealing operation proved invaluable, leading to the arrest of Marcus Volkov and the dismantling of his entire network. Her testimony helped connect the weapons found in the warehouse to several unsolved murders, giving prosecutors the evidence they needed to ensure Marcus would spend the rest of his life in prison. But the most remarkable development came when Colonel Bradley, after reviewing Luna's complete file and consulting with experts in animal behavior and veteran therapy programs, approved a pilot program that would allow Luna to split her time between continued military service and therapeutic work with wounded veterans. The program was unprecedented in military history, but Luna's exceptional abilities and unique background made her the perfect candidate to test whether highly trained military working dogs could successfully transition to dual roles. Dr. Volkov was granted provisional custody of Luna during her therapy work, allowing the woman to finally reconnect with the dog she had thought lost forever. Jake remained Luna's primary handler for military operations, but he also trained to assist with the therapy work, creating a partnership that honored all of Luna's relationships and abilities. The program proved so successful that within 2 years, it was expanded to include other exceptional military working dogs whose temperaments and backgrounds made them suitable for therapeutic roles. Luna's story became a symbol of the military's evolving understanding of the emotional needs of both human and animal veterans. She continued to serve with distinction in tactical operations while also providing comfort and healing to soldiers struggling with the psychological wounds of war. Her ability to bridge the gap between her military training and her natural empathy became a model for how the armed forces could better support the complex emotional needs of all their members. Most importantly for those who loved her, Luna never again had to choose between loyalty and love. She had found a way to honor both her military service and her original purpose as a healer, proving that sometimes the most powerful form of duty is the courage to serve with an open heart rather than simply following orders. In the end, the single word that had frozen a combat dog mid-attack became the key that unlocked a new understanding of what it means to serve others with both strength and compassion. Luna's story showed that true loyalty isn't about choosing sides. It's about finding ways to love and protect everyone who deserves our care.